The cold in the house was a living thing. It had crept in with the first autumn frosts and settled into the plaster, the warped floorboards, the iron bed frame in the attic room where Eva slept. Now, in the hard heart of winter, it breathed with them. Eva, her mother Lise, and her father Gerhard, a fourth silent occupant. It seeped through the cracks around the window frame where newspaper stuffing had long since turned brittle and fallen away. Eva pulled the threadbare blanket, once navy, and now a tired grey, tighter under her chin. But it made no difference. The chill was already inside her. It lived with the hollow ache in her stomach and the tiredness that never quite left. Downstairs, silence. A worse sound than shouting. This silence meant the storm had passed for now. It meant her mother was in the kitchen, lightly pressing a rag to the bruise on her cheek. It meant her father had emptied another bottle of schnapps, the cheap, sharp kind that smelled like fire and medicine, and had finally slumped asleep in his chair by the dead hearth. The air still seemed to hold the memory of him, the slam of his fist on the table making the pot of potato soup jump, the crack of a plate against the wall, her mother's choked sob cut short, and Eva's own scramble up the ladder to the attic, with Brisha clutched so tightly against her chest she feared his seams would split. She lay staring at the water stain on the ceiling that looked like a crooked tree. Her stomach growled. Supper had been interrupted. She doubted there would be anything left. Brisha's single glass eye caught a sliver of moonlight. The bear was missing his other eye and leaking a little sawdust from one shoulder. He was warm from being held all day. At school that afternoon, they had taken him again. Karl Becker, Hans, Werner. Karl had seen the bear under Eva's coat as they stood in the barren yard during the midday break. "Look," he had shouted, loud enough for the others to hear. The ghost girl brought her ghost bear. Eva had tried to hide Brisha deeper inside Fiete's old coat, which was so large on her it swallowed her hands. But Hans had grabbed the bear by one ear, and Werner had pinned her arms behind her back. Karl had laughed and swung Brisha by the leg. "Let's see if he can swim." They had thrown him into the gutter, where slush, ash, and kitchen filth ran black through the snow. Eva had wrenched free and plunged both hands into the freezing muck to snatch him back, ignoring their laughter as it rang off the soot-stained walls. "Look at her," Karl had sneered, "playing in rubbish, just like your deserter brother." That part was a lie. Fiete had not run. He had coughed for weeks, then months. At first it had sounded small, almost silly, like a throat being cleared. Then it became something larger than him, something that shook his thin body until there was nothing left to shake. By the end, he had been all eyes and fever and bones. Then one morning, he simply stopped. Correcting Karl would only have made it worse. Eva had not cried in the yard. Crying took strength and changed nothing. Instead, she had gone where she always went when the world became too sharp. Inward, into the small private kingdom behind her eyes, where voices were kind and colours richer, and Fiete was still alive at 16, still whistling, still carrying her on his shoulders through summer grass behind the old house from before Papa lost his work at the mill. A floorboard creaked downstairs. "Mama," moving carefully. Eva flinched before she could help it, then sank back into the miserable dip of the cot. By dusk, the sky beyond the window had turned the bruised colour of old fruit. She pushed herself upright and crawled to the mattress edge. Frost feathered the corners of the pane. She rubbed a small clear patch with her sleeve and peered out into the backyard. It was a place of failure, even in summer. 2 crooked rows of potatoes, a few cabbages, fighting poor soil, and the shade of the neighbour's fence. Now it was only lumps of snow and dark earth, like shallow graves under gathering evening. And there, between the buried rows, stood a woman. She was impossibly still. Snow drifted around her, but she seemed untouched by the wind, tall, willowy, yet somehow unshakable, like a young tree with roots sunk deep. She wore a simple dress whose colour the dim light would not settle on. Green one moment, grey the next. Her hair was long and red, the deep red of wine held to a fire, and two narrow braids lay against her temples, threaded with something that caught the failing light like frost. She was not looking at the house. She was looking at the bare apple tree in the corner of the yard. Then, slowly, she turned. Her eyes found Eva through the grimy pane. They were blue, not sky blue, not cornflower blue, glacier blue, a deep, clear cold with light trapped inside it. Looking into them felt like staring into old ice and finding something alive within it. The woman smiled, not a happy smile, not quite a comforting one either. It was a smile of recognition, of sorrow shared and understood. The silver scars on her face, so fine Eva had not noticed them at first, caught the last of the light and glimmered like cracks in porcelain filled with moonshine. Eva felt something tug gently behind her ribs. Then snow swept across the yard in a white curtain. When it cleared, the woman was gone. Only the apple tree remained, scratching at the darkening sky. Eva pressed closer to the glass, scanning the yard. Nothing. Had hunger finally begun to make her see things? She had heard stories like that, winter stories, people seeing bread in empty cupboards, fires in cold hearths, faces in the dark. Yet warmth lingered in her chest where there had only been cold a moment before. She stayed at the window until full dark, until her mother called softly up the ladder and asked whether she wanted to come down and try a little soup. Eva did not answer. She curled beneath the blanket with Brisha in her arms and tried to hold on to the fading warmth. It came late, in the deepest part of the night. Tap, 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 not sharp, not urgent, patient, almost tender. Eva opened her eyes. Moonlight lay across the floorboards in a pale bar. Dust drifted through it. The tapping came again. Tap, tap, tap. She sat up, blanket pooling in her lap. Cold air prickled her skin. Her heart beat hard enough to make her throat ache. She crept to the window and peered through the circle she had rubbed clear earlier. The woman was there. This time she stood so near it seemed she was balanced on the roof slope just beyond the attic wall. Moonlight washed her face. Eva could see the silver scars now, tracing her brow, her cheeks, the column of her throat. They were delicate and luminous, as though every wound had healed with light inside it. Her hair moved in a breeze that did not touch the frost on the sill. She raised one finger to her lips, then beckoned. Eva glanced back over her shoulder. The attic hatch, the dark, her father's snoring below, the silence of the house. The whole world seemed suspended, waiting. She unlatched the window. The hinges complained softly. A gust of winter knifed into the room, carrying the clean smell of snow and distant pine. Eva gasped and hugged herself. The woman did not even shiver. "Come," she said. Her voice was low and warm, like embers banked deep in ash. "I can't." Eva's teeth knocked together. "It's cold. I'll freeze." The woman held out her hand through the opening. Her palm was turned upward. Silver scars crossed the back of it in a fine, bright lattice. "The cold is for others tonight, child," she said. "Not for you." Eva stared at the offered hand, then at her own, bluish with cold, the nails bitten ragged, then back at the woman's face. There was no hurry in it, only certainty. Eva placed her hand in hers. Heat rushed up her arm. not a burning heat, a deep one, a living one. It spread into her shoulder, her chest, her belly, her bare feet. It felt like stepping into sunlight after years underground, like thick soup after hunger, like being held. Eva gasped. Tears sprang to her eyes. For the first time in so long she could not remember when. She was not cold. The woman smiled, smaller this time, gentler. Better? Eva could only nod. The woman helped her climb out onto the snowy slope and down into the drift below with a strength that made the movement feel effortless. Eva landed knee-deep in snow, wearing only her thin nightdress, yet the cold no longer touched her. Her body felt strangely light, as though some unseen chain had been cut. The woman stepped down beside her without seeming to disturb the snow at all. She brushed a strand of black hair from Eva's face. "Shall we walk?" They stood together in the backyard, beneath a swollen winter sky. The world had that special silence that only comes with deep snow, when every sound seems to have been muffled at the source. The moon glowed dimly through high cloud. The broken fence cast black bars over the white ground. The warmth from the woman's hand kept moving through Eva, reaching places she had not known were frozen. The knot under her ribs, the tightness between her shoulders, the place around her heart where everything had seemed to go numb after they lowered Fiete into the ground. "Your garden sleeps deeply," the woman said at last, looking toward the buried rose. "But beneath, life waits." Eva clutched Briska tighter. Somehow the bear was warm too. "Mama says nothing will grow here anymore," she murmured. "The soil is tired, like everything else." The woman looked down at her with eyes full of old understanding. Some soils must rest a long time before they remember how to nourish. Then, after a pause, "And you, little one, are you tired?" The question struck so cleanly it hurt. Eva felt tears rise again, not because she was frightened, because she had been seen. She nodded. The woman squeezed her hand. "Tell me." So Eva did. Not in one great flood. She did not have the strength for that. It came in a quiet, halting stream, as if someone had opened a hidden spring inside her. She spoke of Carl and Hans and Werner, of patched dresses and paper in her boots, and the way they laughed when she smelled of damp wool and smoke, of Brisha being stolen because they knew he was the only thing left that still belonged to her. She spoke of Fiete, of how he had taught her to whistle through a blade of grass, of how he used to carry her on his shoulders through summer fields and tell her stories about dragons and kings, of the cough that had turned monstrous, of Mama selling her wedding ring for medicine that did nothing, of the last thing he had whispered to her through cracked lips, "Take care of Brisha for me." She spoke of Papa after that, of the way his face had emptied out, of how his hands stopped carving toys and began striking tables, doors, walls, then softer things, of how sometimes she saw him staring at Fiete's empty chair with such naked pain she thought he might split open. She spoke of Mama, of apologies whispered into her hair, of bread pushed into Eva's hands with "I'm not hungry" said too quickly, of arms that tried to hold and trembled doing it. At last, very quietly, she spoke of herself, the hunger, the fear, the feeling that she was wrong somehow, too much in her head, too little in the world, the way she vanished into daydreams because the real world was all edges. The wind moved through the apple tree with a dry sigh. Eva's voice ran out. Only then did she realize she was crying. The woman lifted her free hand and brushed the tears from Eva's face. Her fingertips were so warm the wetness steamed faintly where she touched it. She had listened without interrupting, without telling Eva to be brave, without saying things would improve. She had offered no false comfort. Only attention, only witness. only the grave respect one gives to someone who has carried too much for too long. At last the woman knelt in the snow so that their faces were level. Even kneeling, she seemed tall. "You have been very brave," she said softly, "braver than any child should need to be." Her scarred hands framed Eva's face. "You have carried grief and fear and hunger as if they were yours to bear. They are not. They belong to a broken world." She brushed black hair behind Eva's ear. "You have carried them long enough. Would you like to put them down?" Eva stared into those deep blue eyes and saw something vast in them. Not just kindness, age, sorrow, patience, the long ache of watching the world wound the small and helpless over and over again. She thought of going back inside, of the ladder, the cot, tomorrow, school, Carl, hunger, Papa, the endless winter of the house. She took a breath that filled her all the way through. Then she nodded. "Yes," she whispered. "I'm ready." "Good," the woman said, rising. "Then walk with me a little way." They passed through the broken gate and out onto the sleeping street. Snow lay over everything in a clean white hush. No carts, no voices, no smoke from the chimneys at this hour. The town looked as though it had been buried and preserved together. Their footsteps made the only sound. Crunch for Eva, almost nothing for the woman. Halfway down the first street, Eva realized she was no longer tired. Each step felt lighter than the last. Her breathing came easily. The ache in her stomach was gone. The dread that had always lived in her chest had loosened and drifted off. She felt almost foolishly light, like someone might laugh to see her, like she might laugh herself. Then, as they passed the last house at the edge of town, something made her look back. She saw the attic window standing open. Below it, in the snow by the wall, lay a small dark shape curled in a drift. A pale hand, a tattered bear, and a child in a thin nightdress tucked around herself as if finally comfortable at last. Herself. Amma stopped walking. She did not speak. Eva stared. There was no shock, no scream, no sudden terror, only a slow settling, a quietness falling into place like fresh snow. This was why the cold had gone, why the hunger had gone, why she felt so light. She was not that body anymore. She was what had been left when the pain stopped. She looked down at her own hand in Amma's. It was still there, still warm, still hers, but faintly luminous now, as if lit from within. "Mama?" Eva asked. It was only one word, but it held everything. Did she know? Did she send you? Will she be alone? Amma's gaze gentled further, though sorrow touched it too. "She loved you enough to ask for peace," she said. "For you, for herself, for what could not be mended here." Eva remembered the sound from below, earlier that evening. Not weeping, not exactly. Something rougher, something pleading. Understanding moved through her quietly. Mama had known. Not in the way of doctors or priests. In the way a mother knows when the world has gone too cruel and her arms are too weak to stand between it and her child any longer. Tears filled Eva's eyes again, but these were different. Amma wiped them away with her thumb. "She will sleep soon too," she said. "But not yet." They stood together a little longer in the falling snow. Then Amma turned them toward the open fields beyond the town. Wind lifted her red hair. The silver scars on her skin shone more brightly in the deepening dark. She tightened her hand around Eva's, not to lead by force, but to steady. "Are you ready?" Eva looked back one last time, at the small town, at the open window, at the little body in the snow that no longer hurt, at the whole long winter she was leaving behind. When she turned back, she was smiling. A small, uncertain smile at first, then a real one. "Yes, They stepped off the road and into the white field. Snow should have dragged at them, but it did not. The storm thickened around them, a curtain of white closing softly on the town behind. For a while there was only the sound of wind and Amma's low humming, almost beneath hearing. It was not a tune Eva knew, yet it felt older than knowing. A song for sleeping, a song for crossing, a song with no sharp edges in it. They walked and walked, or perhaps they only seemed to. The world behind them faded, the house, the schoolyard, the hunger. Even the names of pains she had carried for so long began to lose their weight. Only Fiete and Mama remained clear, not as wounds now, but as warmth. At some point, the footprints behind them simply stopped. Two sets of marks in the snow, one large, one small, ending mid-stride in unbroken white. Dawn came pale and colourless over the town. Light touched the shutters and frost-glazed panes, and the roofs bowed beneath snow. In the little house at the edge of town, Gerhardt woke in his chair with a dry mouth and a neck full of pain. He called for Lisa and got no answer. He lurched to the kitchen, empty, to the bedroom, empty. Then he heard the attic hatch creak in the morning cold, and climbed with dread growing in him step by step. At the top he found the window open. Snow had drifted across the floorboards and onto the empty bed. There was no child, no bear, only the room, pale with dawn, and the cold moving through it like something that had waited all night to come back. Outside, on the fence post by the yard, a single red hair lay among the frost, bright as a thread of living fire. By midday the sun would melt it. By evening no proof would remain at all. Only a silence softer than the one before. Only release. And somewhere beyond the fields, beyond the storm, beyond the reach of winter, two figures walked hand in hand into the whiteness until even the idea of distance gave way, and all that remained was warmth and rest, and a peace so gentle it asked nothing more of the world.